Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining in to Dr. Judy WTF, What the Freud. And tonight we are going to mind map the royal family, signs of narcissistic abuse, personality disorder, features, system gone wrong in the family. And this is a very hot topic. Everybody's talking about the Oprah interview. Oprah interviewed Meghan Markle and Harry, Prince Harry. And there's just a lot of buzz going around and a lot of feelings about this. And I thought I would take the opportunity to mind map this so that people can understand. And I'm very fortunate today to have Christiana Davidson here with me. Not quite in studio, but I'll say in Zoomio, okay?
Yeah.
And she is in London, England. So Christiana, I'm particularly happy to have you with me today because you are in the city where a lot of this emotional upheaval, chaos, reactions, and opinions, and so on is happening. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about what is going on, what's happening in terms of the news and the attitudes of the people, and if you could fill us in on that, I would really appreciate it.
Well, I think, you know, there's as everywhere, I think around the world, there have been mixed reactions to this. You know, some feeling that it was sort of an inappropriate timing, given that you know, the Queen's husband, Prince Philip, has been unwell. So she's had a lot of stress on her in that way. And then others are saying, well, you know, it's maybe it's time. Maybe it's time that, you know, things began to change, and that perhaps Meghan and Harry are the catalyst for a new emerging form of the monarchy that has been you know, traditional and not stuck in its ways. Well, that's perhaps what Harry and Meghan might feel, but has been very solid in its ways over the centuries. So some are saying, well, maybe it's happening as it should. Maybe this is time for a bit of a shift.
And certainly when things break down and shift happens, a lot of people get upset in the process, and they break down in the process. And look who's breaking down. Certainly Prince Philip is not feeling well, and how old is Queen Elizabeth? She must be well into her 90s, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And so everybody is affected by this. And so for those of you who do not know much about me, I'm Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and Christiana Davidson is a mind map life coach with the Psychological Healing Center, and I'm founder of the Mind Map System for Healing Human and Global Disconnect, and author of Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, which everyone can have for free as a download. So please download the book, get on the website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com, and you can also avail yourself of 24-hour help and information, so please do. And so let's put that mind map up there so we can make sense out of all the chaos. So first I'll generally describe it, and then we will apply what's happening to the mind map system so that we can get some clarity here. So the mind map was designed to locate childhood wounds, which I concentrate on 5 of: physical abuse, emotional, verbal abuse, neglect, and smothering, controlling. Those are the main ones. And then people have reactions to these wounds. Some people shut down, some people get very anxious and scared and lose trust in the world, and have psychosomatic issues because of their traumas from childhood. And then all of this information encodes into the psyche in terms of our negative core beliefs about ourselves and the world. Core beliefs such as we're not good enough, or we're not lovable, or that relationships will never work, and so on and so forth. And then this setup, so to speak, this blueprint then gets triggered by life and systems and takes us down into chaos, defenses, and eventually breaks us down. The ultimate breakdown, of course, being homicide, suicide, two ends of the spectrum. And then the purpose of the mind map is to create a system gone right that is sustainable, that is mentally healthy, that supports the growth of the individual, that supports the growth of the society, and so on and so forth. And so we're going to look at the family system, the royal family system, through the lens of the mind map. And keep in mind, I do not know any of the people involved. I have never met Queen Elizabeth, Philip, and Kate and William.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe soon. Okay. And I've never spoken to Meghan or Harry or Oprah. So again, I want to put this information across as the best mind map analysis that we can come up with, so that there's some semblance of understanding through the lens of the mind map. And so we can see why everything is falling into chaos. Why is it that Meghan is now on the brink of a breakdown with suicidal thoughts and feelings? Why is it that there's been a big Nexit with Harry and Meghan exiting England? What could possibly be going on in the minds of the royals, and so on? And so this is not a small thing. This is a huge display, so to speak, of what happens when a system like the royal family, steeped in tradition, pomp, and circumstance, is challenged. We're really shaking a big tree here. So let's take a look, and go ahead, Christiana. What are your thoughts here?
No, I was just going to say, you know, what we're doing here tonight is the same thing that, you know, you or I or any of the coaches would do with the client. You know, we take stock of the symptoms in their lives and then trace it back to the cause.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's about sort of trying to have empathy with the person. So that's what we're doing with Meghan tonight. You know, we're keeping in mind that this is a real person with very real struggles. And
absolutely. Okay, so she definitely entered a system that maybe she didn't quite know what she was signing up for, because just as a fantasy, every little girl's fantasy, and this is encouraged in fairy tales, is to marry a prince.
And she said that, actually.
Pardon me?
She actually said that, you know, in the lead up to the marriage. She said, well, it's every girl's dream to marry the prince.
Right. It's just that this particular system that she entered into, which she may have been aware of to a certain degree, it would be hard to not be at all aware of what she was signing up for, but maybe she didn't quite know what it was going to look like, feel like, and so on. And we're talking about a woman who is from California, a woman who is in the field of acting, self-expression, right? We're talking about a biracial woman in the 2021 year. We're talking about someone who has been through a family of divorced parents. We're talking about a woman who has been divorced herself. We're talking about a mother who just had a baby. And we're talking about an era where we are more and more conscientious of race and of fairness and so on. And so we have to take all of this into perspective. And then
women's empowerment.
Pardon me?
Women's empowerment, isn't it?
Right. And then we have to take into consideration Harry and his history, losing his mother, growing up motherless, and a father who I don't quite understand the relationship between Harry and Prince Charles. Do you know a little bit more about that relationship?
Well, you know, I think both boys were close to their mother growing up.
Yes.
But I think over the years, I think the relationship with their father has got better, and I think the relationship between Harry and Prince Charles was quite good towards the end.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So there'll be some pain there for Harry, I think.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, so so his background and his relationship with his brother William, and of course Kate and William and their children and their status in the royal family, which has already been established. And then here comes Kate, and she's sort of up there, right? Not quite the blueprint that the royal family may have had in mind. Correct?
You mean Meghan, Dr. Judy?
I'm sorry. Thank you. Meghan, she wasn't quite fitting the mold.
No.
Okay. And just as an outsider looking in, there are just so many rules. I've been reading about how protocol looks like in the royal family. For example, the young ladies who are the princesses, the royals cannot wear bright nail polish, and they have to cover their legs in stockings, and they have to have clutch purses, and they cannot really show public displays of affection. And it's, they have to curtsy in front of the queen, whether they are family or not. So there's a lot to memorize. It's almost like the handbook of entering the royal family. You've got to sit down and learn the protocol. So this in and of itself is very difficult. And let's make a few distinctions just so people can understand that when you sign up to be to marry into the royal family, you're signing up publicly for a role.
Yes.
Okay, so it's very important to respect a particular role. So that doesn't mean that you can't be affectionate as a family. Of course, you could be affectionate as a husband and wife and brother to brother and so on. It's just that in the public eye, there is a real, there are rules of behavior.
It's almost, it's taking on a job at the same time as becoming married, That's
what it is. So it's sort of like a club. And if you don't know the rules of the club, not good. If you don't play by the rules of the club, worse. Okay. And if you don't think that you're going to do well in that system, don't sign up. It's not for you. It's not for everyone. Okay. And so, any thoughts, Christiana, about what I'm saying? Sort of looking at all the different moving parts here.
Yeah, it's a complex picture, but it's also akin to many family pictures. Many families have dealt with divorce and have different lineages coming together.
Yes.
So although it might sound completely foreign to the normal family setup, in some ways, there are many basic similarities.
Thank you for bringing that up, because not all families are homogenous. Especially today, there are biracial families. There are cultural differences among people, and one of the aspects of our work is to identify cultural wounds and help people integrate one culture with another, and bring some sort of a synergy to the couple and the family, so that the system doesn't have to keep clashing and breaking down, and there could be mutual understanding and respect. So yes, you're correct. This is no different. It's just this is on a mega scale, right? And so
a Meghan scale.
A Meghan scale. Thank you. A lot of puns will be said tonight, I'm sure. Okay. So let's take a look at all the people involved. There's Harry growing up motherless for a lot of his life, and worse, his mother suffering in the system as well. Okay, and exiting the system. and being a humanitarian and being an emotional and loving woman and a loved woman, and having these two beautiful children and being the nurturing type of person, very different than the atmosphere of the no PDF and no touching and so on. And right, I want to refer back to John Bowlby, Dr. John Bowlby, father of attachment theory. And Dr. John Bowlby was doing his research in London, England, with Dr. Mary Ainsworth, and so I'm sure he knew the Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth, because he was a bit bigger, and I think that his son, Sir Richard Bowlby, might have been knighted by.
Yes.
I think he was knighted by the Queen. Okay, so they were not foreign to the concept of attachment theory, except that traditionally they didn't quite follow it. I've been doing a little reading today because I wanted to be up on some facts regarding attachment theory, and I found out that Queen Elizabeth did breastfeed her children for 2-3 months. However, it was the style to leave your children with the grandparents and to travel. So she would take off for weeks and months at a time with her husband, and the children would be with the grandparents. And so in terms of attachment, there was some attachment, but the primary caregiver was not mom and dad, it was grandma and grandfather. Okay, so there's some of that distance, and there is, again, that a little bit of that family disconnect.
Yes.
And we know that
and sort of setting the stage for a sort of anxious attachment.
Attachment
in
right.
The children, not being certain of the constancy of the mother's presence, and then that playing out in later relationships, right, where there's sort of there's a continued disconnect, where emotions are not valued, where no one has sort of learned how to emotionally regulate to some extent, and things are pushed in.
Right, and so Harry meets Meghan, and Meghan is an emotional woman. She's a very eloquent woman, and she's a touchy woman. You can see that there's a lot of PDA, and even with William and Kate, there's some PDA. I think they're more restrained and know the rules and the rules better, and they practice longer, and so on and so forth. But it's a different atmosphere than the atmosphere that Meghan and Harry seem to be creating for their children. Okay, so
absolutely, and when both Meghan and Harry refer to their life within the royal fold as being in prison, it just made me immediately think of that sort of psychological prison.
Yes,
more so is what they were talking about, I think, than the physical restrictions to some extent.
So yes, I mean, so look, if there's this restriction in affection, and I think even Kate and William are affectionate with their children, they just have to restrain themselves in public, then there's this repression, okay? And so it doesn't surprise me that Harry would be attracted to somebody highly emotional, in touch with her feelings, right? And somebody who liked her individuation and her freedom and so on, because if he felt that he was in prison, then maybe he needed an exit plan. And that was something that I was thinking of. There are a lot of unconscious forces at work that even we don't know about. And of course, I'm theorizing here. I want everybody to know I'm theorizing. I don't have the full truth on it because I don't know the people involved. However, it makes sense that if he felt that he was in prison, then he would co-create a Mexit or a Hexit or whatever we want to call it, okay, from the prison of the royal family.
Yes, and it makes sense, that he said he wasn't aware that he was in prison until he met Meghan.
Well, okay, so maybe she opened his eyes. It's
His,
just that it's a very, very tough realization because he's born into this family. So he's already in the system. So we're a little bit myopic, meaning short-sighted when we're in the system. And sometimes it takes another human being to pull us out and say, see, this isn't healthy. And so where I stand on the matter is that I always put mental health first. So the way I
absolutely.
see things is that just because it may be culturally correct, just because it may be politically correct or royally correct, it doesn't mean that it's going to be mentally healthy. And especially for people like Meghan and others who just I don't think it's a good fit. I don't think that
No,
family was a good fit. Okay.
no.
And I think for Kate it was a better fit because I think she knew what she was signing up for
Yes.
and she accommodated to the system, I believe, quite well. What is your
Very well.
thought? Very well. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
very well. And I think that it was always going to be a big ask of Meghan, because she is coming in from a completely different cultural background.
Right.
It's only a cultural change. Her country, she wasn't born here, so it's not naturally part of her story. So she was
Agreed.
trying to almost enter into this ancient story of traditions and symbolic meaning, and it's like
Yes.
speaking a different language, and
Yeah.
trying to immerse yourself. It was never going to be easy,
Right.
and perhaps she did underestimate um, what it would require of her, how much of herself she may have to let go of in order to immerse herself.
Well, I believe in the Oprah interview, she was commenting about how she had to be half herself. They asked her to be
Yes.
half herself. How do you be half yourself? I don't know how to do
Yes.
that one. However, we know through systems gone wrong and narcissism that control is a way to suppress a child and and arrest the child from growing and mold the child to grow in certain directions. And again, that's really getting away from mental health because what I mean by narcissistic system is a system gone wrong where the culture or the structure or the parents or the multi-generational lineage, whatever it is, puts their own agenda before
Yes.
the mental health of the child. And that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at it through the lens of, wait a minute, is this mentally healthy and for who? So maybe we could say for Kate, she seems to be okay with it. For Meghan, look, she's suicidal and can't be left alone. And it's just doesn't, it's not the right environment for her. And for Harry, too. And you can only imagine what these boys went through to find out that their mother was killed in a car crash and all the different people in their parents' lives. We've got Prince Charles, who had an affair with Camilla and eventually married her. And so there was not a lot of authentic love between mom and dad, meaning Diana and Charles. And so there was no real role model of pillars that supported each other. And this is very damaging on the psyche of the children, specifically William and Harry. So it's impossible that this did not have an impact on them. And same with Meghan. She comes from a divorced family. I understand that the mother, a yoga teacher, and I forget, she has a very close relationship with the mother. And I think she spent a lot of time with her father, who's Caucasian. The mother is African American. And so she was confused, like, am I white? Am I black? And I think at some point she had to check off a form that says, am I black or white? And she just kind of went, I don't know. Okay. And I have, you know, I make a big deal of our human race and how we have ismed. I call it the isms. If you look at panel number 5, it's a metaphor for our isms: Black, white, Chinese, American, Democrat, Republican, rich, poor. I don't know what else you make it up, but we have a lot of isms. And the problem is not necessarily that we're ismed, it's that we don't respect each other. We don't honor each other. We don't know how to take our isms and bring it to the human race. So we don't know how to play the game of synergy. And so the isms have become clashing points. So if you look at panel number 6, these are clashing points for the human race, and they don't create a united humanity, which was always the macro intention of the mind map. It was originally called To End the Human Race, Healing Global Disconnect. And the mission.
Dr. Judy, if we look at Meghan, you know, her father, her parents divorced when she was about 6 years old, I think. And you know, one can sort of infer that she may have felt abandoned by her father and aligned with her mother, who was an African American lady.
Yes.
She would have, you know, she would have felt that perhaps her father had abandoned her and her mother because they were different race. And so Meghan spends her life thereafter then trying to reconnect or do a WTF, as you rightly say, trying to bring about a different result by approaching, you know, the most perhaps white institution in the world.
That's right.
And seeking acceptance and to be valued and protected by them. So she's seeking to repair that wound of childhood.
Absolutely. And so she was looking in all the wrong places for the repair. And that's what I call the WTF, when we go back to the injurious mother, the injurious father, or the injurious relationship dynamic, or the injurious family, and we go back to the injurer to try to heal. And I have a specific episode called The Herder Can't Be the Healer. And that is the true WTF, or what the Freud.
Absolutely.
So let's take a look a little bit about Meghan's core, her wounds of childhood. So we have the divorced parents, right? And then we've got the cultural wound of who am I? Am I white, black? Where do I fit in here? And then
am I wanted?
Right. And the reactions to the wounds. So here she encodes all these potential possible core beliefs, like I don't fit in and I never will, or I don't really know quite where I belong, or I'm not wanted, as you mentioned. And these again are guesses, because I don't know Meghan, but I do know that she's had severe breakdown. And why would people break down so hard? Because their core beliefs are being triggered. These unconscious core beliefs of not feeling wanted, of not being included, and so on and so forth. But yet she signed up to try to be included in the most uninclusionary system of all. And so there's
the most opposite system the most opposite culture in some ways to what she'd known.
Correct. And Harry's panel 1 wounds include losing his mother, and of course a father that may not have been quite present. And I don't know if the grandparents were particularly affectionate with the children. I don't know. Certainly publicly, probably not. So it seems that he was looking for somebody that was going to be a motherly, affectionate, emotional being, and a freedom lover, and maybe somebody who unconsciously would stir up enough to break free.
Yes, and I think in a way, perhaps what's happening for Harry as well, you know, the powerlessness perhaps that he felt as a young boy over the circumstances of his mother's death, and perhaps a sort of inner internalized anger, which we know, you know, leads to depression. Um, he's seeking, in a way, to make up for that by putting the safety of his wife and the mother of his children first. So, you know, seeking to protect her above all things, um, is almost remedying that powerless situation that he was in as a young boy, where his mother was left unprotected and there was
Right.
nothing he could do.
That's right. And even though he felt that he was in a prison, and I allude to childhood and some cultural institutions that don't let people grow as a hostage situation, he's a grown man and he can get out. So he took the freedom. And interestingly enough, having grown up in Montreal, Canada, I remember when the Union Jack was flying and we were under the auspices of the British Empire, very connected. And then we also established our own and broke free of that. And then the maple leaf is now flying. And so to me, it's really, really interesting that they picked Canada in particular to exit too, because Canada represents a break from the royals.
Empire, yeah.
Right. So there's just a lot of what the Freud's going on. And if you have a question or two, feel free to call in. I know we've got a lot of information that we're putting out here and a lot of mind mapping and so on. But again, as Christiana pointed out, this is a grand scale, public scale of system and family dynamics, sibling rivalry and scapegoating and so on and so forth. And I know that my audience is very familiar with all of these themes. And thank you, people, for watching me and sometimes binge watching me and going through the mind map process and purchasing the videos and downloading the books, because the more we are conscious of what's happening, the more we can be the cause. That's the point. As I say in my book, a quote from, I haven't read my book for a while. It was Carl Jung said, if we don't make the unconscious conscious, it's going to rule us. So that's our job, is to unearth what the Freuds and these connect the dots and the childhood wounds and how they shadow over us and create horrible multi-generational blueprints and systems and how they break us down. And so if we were to, let's say, mind map any one of the people in the royal family, we would see what their core beliefs are and so on and so forth, and how they interface with other members of the family, because ultimately people trigger each other. So let's say Meghan doesn't feel a sense of belonging and she enters the royal family and she's not quite making the grade there, and then she's activated in her negative core belief, and then her son is not protected. I believe they didn't have any security and they're not going to inherit title and so on. And then the big question asked was, can you believe that they asked how dark the baby was going to be? Yes. Okay, yes. So I'm sure she took it to mean that maybe her baby's not going to be welcomed by the family. And the truth is, we don't really know the intention behind it. We can assume, okay, and from the little research that I was doing, it doesn't seem that, I think she texted Oprah to say that it wasn't Queen Elizabeth or Prince Philip that said that. So, I'm sitting here looking at the information. I've been approached by media to mind map this, and I hope that an article will be coming out really soon, which I will post as on my website. But what was I saying? I kind of lost the thread there.
So you're talking about Oprah and how Meghan had texted
Yeah,
to say that was.
there's this very walking on eggshells kind of thing because look, Harry is in a horrible situation. He doesn't want to say my brother, or my sister-in-law, or my grandmother. He's not going to say this, okay? And then Meghan, look, the family's already rifting, and if Meghan starts saying anything about his family, she's out of place. He's going to be very upset.
Absolutely,
So,
and the thing is, if we look at it, Meghan came to the royal family and saw all that she had to give up in order to belong to that family, and
yeah,
she felt that it was too much for her, and it was clearly too much. So
really,
rightly, she stepped back from it. But Harry now has given up all his
his family.
identity. Yeah, his identity in some ways. As a royal, he's given up everything, and I wonder, that can't be an easy sacrifice. So
No,
sacrifice is never easy, um, and I wonder if it's an equal one, um,
we
because
won't
that
know.
can lead to resentment further down the line if it's out of balance.
So I think that everyone has to walk on eggshells because the rift is already very
Yes.
deep, and anything said will be more damaging. And I think Meghan was aware of that in the interview, and she didn't want to say, "I'm not comfortable talking about that." And yeah, Harry said, "Nope, not talking about that." And so sometimes it's what people don't say that
Yes.
people pay attention to, right?
Yes.
Because now
Absolutely.
we're thinking, oh, who said that? Is there racism in the royal family? And it's got everybody wondering, and so then it plays on the psyche of the people watching this unfold, and the people who are also triggered in their own cultural wounds and core beliefs and so on. And so you could see that this is having reverberations across the world,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And if
And
any, yeah, I just wanted to say if anybody wants to call in, please do. And the number is below. And please feel free to ask anything that you would like of Christiana and myself.
I was thinking also, Dr. Judy, Meghan had two step sisters, I think. So her
They
father
were
had
half sisters.
half
A
sisters,
sister and a brother, I think.
sister and a brother. Okay.
Okay, and yeah. Hmm.
Mm. So, if we were to sort of look at that as a pattern, which has played out again in her entry into this new family, the royal family, we can see in some of what Meghan said in the interview. There was one point that really stood out to me. She said something along the lines of, you know, you don't have to, just because you love her doesn't mean you have to hate me. Speaking of the royal family, she's saying to them, you don't have, just because you love Kate doesn't mean you have to hate me.
Right, right. The
And
loyalty thing. Like, does that mean?
absolutely.
Okay.
And
And
so I wonder, was that sort of a playing out of how she felt as a young girl when her father had, two previous children.
yes,
That, in a way, she's saying, you don't have to reject me in order to keep your allegiance to them, in order to love them. You could love both of us.
that's a very, very good point. But that would mean love you for the individual that you are and not for the role that you play. Okay, there's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're playing, if you're valued for what you do and how you behave, which is the narcissistic value system, because it's an objectified value system. Oh, Christiana, if you reflect well on me, I love you. If you wear the clothes that I want you to, I love you. And if you separate and individuate and you are separate, I don't love you. Okay, so this is conditional. This is not truly valuing the human being. And so
No,
that's the
and it's putting it, it's this whole emphasis on sort of the public persona and the private persona, which is something that is very apparent in narcissistic families.
Absolutely.
Where we kind of put on the public show, but then behind closed doors.
Such a great point, Christiana, because how many of our patients and clients say, oh my God, I must be crazy because everybody tells me what wonderful people my parents are. And why am I feeling differently? And I'm confused. So it's the Alice Miller quote. A child would rather be the bad one and the parents be the good ones. Why? Because that gives the child a semblance of control. If the child can then please and be good and step up to the plate, then the parents will love them. Okay, horrible, toxic bond formed right there.
We have a call.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, and who am I speaking to, please?
This is Amber.
Hi, Amber. Thank you so much for calling in. And so what thoughts do you have about what we're speaking about?
Well, at this point now, since the time I called in before I got started into the mind map therapy,
Yeah.
I just, I've completed up to panel 3 and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, yes, all these signs, and I see them all, absolutely, and we could go into them ad nauseum, but I wondered if you wanted just for a moment to talk about, at this stage already, before even moving into the real solution near the end of the journey, the signs of the system falling apart, because it's already happening.
Okay, so look, I'm a big fan of sustainability, and anything that's sustainable is going to grow. Free talk Capra, I talk about it in my book. And so if we're building something foundationally, it's got to be a growth system supporting the individuals up the evolutionary scale. Mind, body, soul is how I like to put it. Okay, so if we look at the royal family from that point of view, well, they've certainly existed for a long time, so there's been something about it that people have adhered to. And, nothing's all black and white, I guess, pun intended, sort of, okay? There are different aspects. So a system like that, maybe some of it is really, really interesting to the public, that there is a ruling queen and a prince that holds the fort, so to speak, and takes care of the people. It's sort of like, I think somebody was talking about a feudal system, you see. And we do like to idealize it because we're in a society with little mothering and little fathering. Maybe we kind of need that role model in some way. So you see that part of it. I can see that. But then again, if a system is too exclusionary and if there are rules and roles that stunt a person's growth, then ultimately it's not sustainable. And if the system doesn't grow with the evolution of the consciousness of the human race, it's not going to sustain itself. And then eventually there will be catalysts, as Christiana said, that will challenge the system, and then boom, 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 chaos, defenses, and breakdowns.
But the thing is, like you say in your book, Dr. Judy, a breakdown is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, a breakdown is the precursor to a breakthrough.
It is.
So it's actually part of the change process. It's not that everything's gone wrong. It's actually a sign of growth happening.
Yes, it is. As long as the people can stay conscious about it and not demean, devalue, and destroy everybody in the process, because people are where they are and systems are where they are. So I think the better way is, instead of saying the royal family is horrible and that system is horrible, and Megan, and you see, we can't really afford necessarily to think that way. We have to step back, and instead of identifying with it, we have to identify it and pull back and see what's going to be in favor of the human race, which is why I tried so hard to do a macro project called Join the Human Race Healing Global Disconnect, so that we could finally come to some terms and put our humanity before our race and our culture and our religion and our nationality and so on and so forth, because at the core of it, we're all human beings, and we pretty much need the same thing. We need a secure attachment, we need affection, we need support, we need to be seen for who we are, we need to be attuned to and mirrored, and yeah, I don't see how that's changed. You still there, Anne?
I think, yeah, I am. No, I think what's fascinating for me is that before I'm even doing 4, 5, and 6 and looking at the chaos, defenses, and breakdowns, it's just starting to begin to fall away. Like conversations have come up, right? Because I'm the one challenging the system, and it's like the power of the individuals should not be underestimated. I ended up, it just came out, I ended up telling my dad probably the most traumatic thing that happened in my childhood that he did. Tonight, he apologized.
How did he take it?
He apologized.
Oh,
he didn't remember. He had no memory of it. He buried it. And when he apologized to me, he told me, I told my sister what you said. And she said, I'll bet Debbie told you to do that. And that's my mom, right? Well, and I'm like, oh, that resonates. Everything started to get clear. And that's the thing, as these little pieces of clarity come together, I even had a talk with Mom, who's the covert narcissist. And you know what she admitted? That the one mistake she can see she made with her children was treating them like they were her best friends. And she didn't realize
that's a big one, parentified adults. Okay. So in a regular, I don't even know if there's such a thing, family, right, that's not in the public eye, people can get sloppy and messy and try to communicate or miscommunicate and try again and sling words at each other. But in a royal family, publicly, you've got to suppress all that. And we already know that suppression leads to depression. So going back to Meghan Markle, she's had to suppress her feelings, and she did cry out for help. And I think that she was denied help. She was not allowed to seek inpatient hospitalization because she wasn't feeling safe about being left alone. And I'm imagining that that wouldn't look very good to the royal family, the public view of the royal family. So you see, we've got to dismantle. And I also talk a lot about proactive versus reactive chaos. So in what we're talking about, we've got a lot of maybe both, a little bit of proactive, let's get the heck out of here, and reactive, well, I'm reacting to the prison. It's better to take down something that doesn't work rather than have it topple all over your head, kind of like an old dilapidated building. If you keep building on it and building and painting it and decorating it, well, too bad. You just wasted your money because it's going to topple over. But sometimes it's really, really important to let things fall apart and just appreciate that the falling apart is part of the evolutionary process. And that's why panel 3, 4, 5, I call it the decoding process. We've got to decode the past, and we have to let go and proactively take apart that which doesn't work, so that by panel 7, 8, 9, we can build a synergistic, a reparative self and a synergistic and reparative human race. So again, macro, micro. Wanted to heal the world on a macro basis. I thought it was a good idea, and found out that we've got to heal people individually, and then we've got to psychoeducate people into systems and cultural wounds and childhood wounds that limit growth and so on and so forth. So Amber, I'm really, really glad that you're doing this. And I think that as we learn, we start shifting our perspective. And instead of being myopic and having this lens of perception and being in the muck and the mire, things become clear. Look at panel number 7, paradigm shift. You see the little light in the middle? Well, there it is, paradigm shift, clarity.
And actually,
yeah, and it's like pieces. I was saying pieces come early, right? One person healing just loosens the ties that bind, and that's what I'm noticing, even before getting that far in the journey. That's why I think it's really powerful to choose to do this for self.
Thank you.
You know, and just one statement on your mission. This is no try, love. We're gonna do this.
Oh,
we're gonna make more people aware.
I've been wanting to do that.
We're gonna make more people aware. Trust me, I spent more than 20 years in personal development rooms and all kinds of things trying to find what I found here. And that's unacceptable to me that I spent that much effort, and most people don't even put that much in. Well, how do we reach people unless there's a voice?
Look,
that pulls people in. So
thank you. And here's an easy way to do it. Share the PDF of my book on your Facebook and social media. It's free, Free. I can't think of a better price than that. And I still am passionate about wanting to get this into the school systems and the prison systems and the political systems. How do you like that? One of my dreams is to mind map the people in the system so that people can have a pathway to connection, not just a way to manipulate and control. Because the opposite of empathy and the opposite of peace and understanding is control and power. And we can't afford to live in the paradigm of control and power. It's important to have control and power. That's nice to have. As a parent, you want to have power. You want to have control. As a boss, you want to have, but you don't want to have abusive power. You don't want to have abusive control. And if everybody were more interested in panel number 7, which is the synergy panel, which is the 1 + 1 is greater than 2, which simply means that, let's say, Christiana, you and I are working together. Because of you, I'm enhanced, and because of me, you're enhanced, and because of us, other people are enhanced. So that's my favorite panel, just for everybody to know. And that's playing a better game of life. And if you notice, it's also my logo. That's how much I like it. So Amber, I'm so glad that you're learning this. And I think it just takes everybody to pass along some psychoeducation, and one at a time. Healing begets healing. I believe that. And I think that if there's something that's really shining of light, people are going to gravitate toward the light. And so that's what I'm hoping that people can grasp, is the light. So thank you so much for calling in, and we'll just continue a little bit more about this interview and the narcissistic systems, the systems gone wrong. Now, I'm not saying that these people are narcissists, so let's be clear on that. Okay, I can imagine the emails that I'm going to get. Did you call Meghan and Harry and Queen Elizabeth and Philip and William and Kate? No, I don't know them. I don't know them. It's just that I'm looking at the system, and I'm looking at the system being challenged and falling apart to some extent. I'm looking at the family alienation, and my heart goes out to everybody, because I just don't think they have enough psychoeducation to figure all this out. And with the air of suppression and non-communication, it's tough, right? Because you're not supposed to really talk about it.
It's interesting because a lot of my clients come to me and they say, well, I went no contact, so I broke away from the family system. But many of them will say to me, well, that was only 5% of the work that was needed for me to do. the real work begins once you've broken away, and you need to then begin that inner journey of looking at the wounds. You know, how did those impact me? What was the self-image I put on as a result of the system I was brought up in? How has that been limiting me in my life?
That's right.
And then, you know, let go of that anger, the suppressed anger, which is, you know, holding me back.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. Let it go by expressing it, truth dialogues with your therapist, with your life coach.
Exactly. And then you're, like you say, my favorite panels too, 7, 8, and 9, because we then move the focus from looking back at what they did to me towards, okay, how am I going to make lemonade out of these lemons?
Right.
Not only for me.
Right. How am I going to be the cause? Because panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is when you're under the wheel of the bus. Okay. And 7, 8, 9 is when you're driving the bus and you're being the cause.
Yes. Great analogy.
Right? Okay. And if we don't get in the driver's seat, then the wheels of the bus are just going to go round, 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 because I have to sing that 100 times a day with my grandson, you know, until he got bored with it. But that took a billion rounds of the wheels of the bus go round, round, round. Okay, all through the town, all through the world. And that's what we're doing. We're just spinning and spinning, and we're what the Freuding. So
that's why for Meghan and Harry, I think it would be, you know, I think now the real work begins for both of them if they have that opportunity, you know, to take a journey with them.
Meghan and Harry, if you're listening, please contact the Psychological Healing Center. And I'm being very serious because I think that this kind of a work in mind mapping it will put a lot of peace in your heart, will put things in context. And Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip and William and Kate, everyone has a lot at stake, and we specialize in healing families. Okay, so this is not a time to put wedges. This is a time to self-reflect, self-correct, evaluate individually, evaluate the system, and maybe it's time to grow the system and adapt or adopt a new system or new expressions of a system that will support mental health, individuality, humanity, right? And this would be the system gone right. So anyway, I want to thank you very, very much. And I'm so glad that I got to talk to you in England, London, where all of this is happening. And please reach out to us at the Psychological Healing Center, psychologicalhealingcenter.com, or drjudywtf.com will take you there. And please do get help, get the book. And I'm looking forward to more mind mapping. And thank you, audience, for always being so loving and open and challenging and also acknowledging. I appreciate you all, and hopefully this will lead to a little bit more of an awareness, and hopefully we will have a paradigm shift because of all the chaos and the defenses. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Christiana. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.